We are going to wind up with two incubators, very exciting stories this afternoon. One is the New Jersey Bioscience Center that is run by Lenzie Harcum, who actually used to be part of the EDC here and is now the director of the New Jersey Bioscience Center. One of their companies that is from New York City, LinusBIO, led by Manish, Arora, founder and CEO, will give a talk, followed by Vishaal, Bhuyan, who is the CEO of Aanika Biosciences. He was here last year to share his experiences about founding Aanika. This year he's here to talk about a new incubator that he's actually launching in Aanika's space called Cultured Colonies. And I think it'll be music to all of your ears. Certainly many of the startups that are in the city looking for lower cost space, and it's located at Industry City, so we welcome them.
Good afternoon. My name is Lenzie Harcum. I'm the director of New Jersey Bioscience Center. This is a 300,000 square foot biotech research park, 50 acres in North Brunswick, exit 9, just 30 minutes from the Holland Tunnel. And we have space for virtually all types of companies. We have an incubator, it's with subsidized rent. We have 5 buildings in total, 1 under construction. Building 5 that you see there is actually under construction. We have space for companies that can start in the incubator and then continue to grow within the research park. So it's not unusual that we have a company start in the incubator, and then they graduate. They have to graduate in 5 years or less, and then they will then expand and grow into the step-out labs. We also have other space. We've had actually an example where a company grew from 1 lab within the incubator, slowly took over building 2 with 15,000 square feet, and then Ascendia is the name of the company, and then they went to 60,000 square feet. They took over the whole entire space. So it's quite a nice community. And we have 38 companies in total there, about 18 of which are in the incubator. Now, the incubator is known as Incubator at North Brunswick. It has 27 private labs, and we have quite a number of interesting companies in there. We have a Cornell Medical School spin out there called Sonda RX. They're in the ophthalmic space. We have an oncology company called Delve. They're have in-licensed technology from WashU. The founder of GeneWiz started her company, GeneWiz, over 20 years ago within the incubator itself, and then she sold it for quite a bit of money in 2018, came back with in-licensed technology from Yale, and is operating out of the incubator again. And of course, since we're only 3 minutes from Rutgers, we have a couple of Rutgers spinouts as well. But I think one of the more exciting incubator tenants within the facility is LinusBIO. It's a spin-out out of Mount Sinai, and Linus has raised quite a bit of money in a short period of time that they've been within the incubator. And here to discuss the company is Dr. Manish Arora. Manish is vice chairman of the Department of Environmental Medicine and Public Health at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, and he is the founder and CEO of LinusBIO. So, Manish?
Thank you, Lenzie. Let's see if this works. Okay, good. First of all, working with Lenzie, being in that New Jersey Biosciences space has just been an absolutely fantastic experience. We've had all the support we need, and I'm very glad that we ended up there. So as Lenzie said, the company is Linus Biotechnology. It's a company based in precision exposome medicine. Now, I suspect exposome is not a term that everyone is familiar with, so I'll start off by briefly introducing the basic scientific philosophy behind our company. This graph was generated by a colleague of mine several years ago. Essentially, it shows that not all diseases can be adequately explained or addressed by using genetic tools alone. And more we are coming to recognize this. However, when you compare that message with this slide, most of our investment has still been in genomics. So there's this imbalance. We invested about $1 trillion over the last 20-odd years, and it's been primarily in genomics, while many diseases don't exist and cannot be addressed through that realm. So this is what I like to call the next trillion-dollar question. What lies beyond genomics? And the answer to that question, at least for me, is the exposome, which is a relatively new concept. I am one of the co-founders of the first institute on this scientific field at Mount Sinai, and LinusBIO is a spin-out of that institute. So we're studying all the environmental factors and your biological response to that. But that's a heavy lift. And the reason that's a heavy lift can be seen by the unmet need. If you think of all of these neurological disorders, some of these gut disorders, how are they diagnosed? How are the clinical trials done for these conditions? Many of you would be surprised to know that autism spectrum disorder, which impacts 3% of all children in America and worldwide, is diagnosed on a questionnaire. Anyone who's had a colonoscopy while you were lying there, you should be thinking, why can't I just get a blood test like I do for diabetes? The answer for that question is a huge technological burden and an obstacle that took us 19 years to overcome. I just want to convey that when I say we have overcome it, it's not just I who's saying it as a co-founder. We have FDA breakthrough designation for one of our autism biomarkers. It's the only biomarker in the world that can detect autism as early as birth. So this is our technological innovation. From a single strand of scalp hair, we generate the same amount of data as that would take 500 to 1,000 blood samples. So that is just a massive amount of omic data. I like to say that most omic platforms just measure many, many things, but we measure many, many things at many, many times. Compare what I'm saying to blood tests. You see those two red dots? That's all you have. You don't know what happened before or after that was a clinical trial. You're surrounded by black boxes. I'm going to show you some real data. That's 2,000 time points for that one molecular marker, all from a single strand of hair, collected at home, sent without any storage conditions. During the pandemic, that was a huge advantage because you're not going to come into a medical center to give blood if your child has autism, because that, even on a good day, is a very difficult prospect, whereas during the pandemic, it carries huge risk. So we are a platform technology. We're not a diagnostic. We have 2 pharma contracts, 2 phase 2 trials. One we have completed on a microbiome outcome, not a neurological outcome. We've tripled our revenue. We're on track to make $3 million this year, about $6 million next year. And we have a very healthy patent portfolio as well. So here's just some highlights. Novozymes is one of our pharma partners, and we've just finished the phase 2 trial. We're negotiating the next stage. We've got some media coverage on our new autism test, which, as I said, is the first in class, only test that can detect autism as early as birth. And we've received FDA breakthrough designation. So things are going fairly well for us. The overall mission of this new field of precision medicine, what is my mission as a parent, as a public health professional, as a founder, is to create this win-win situation. Because the inefficiency is killing our medical system when it comes to neurological disorders, whether it's autism or it's Parkinson's or it's Alzheimer's. We are just not doing as well as we are in other fields. I always come back to diabetes. We're doing a lot better there. Our patients will be better off because we can give them the correct answer non-invasively and much faster and much cheaper. Our clinicians are better off because they have a tool that helps them make a much better decision than just a questionnaire. And our payers are going to be happy because, hey, this is faster, more accurate, and way, way, way cheaper. It currently costs you about $5,000 in 3 days of your own time to get your child fully evaluated for neurodevelopmental disorders. Imagine if you live 5 hours from New York City. Imagine the extra cost in lost income, travel, and everything else. We can do that for a fraction of the cost while you never leave your house. But lastly, we're not just addressing the problems of today. We're working with pharma companies to come up with new drugs and new compounds so that we can find novel therapeutics using this platform. And this is the model. Our own hardware, which we have developed, and our data science doesn't care where the hair came from, whether you're a newborn with potentially autism, you're a 60-year-old with ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, or you're somewhere in between with psychosis and schizophrenia. In fact, we are doing preclinical studies on mice where we cut the whisker, and the platform really doesn't care whether it's a human hair or a mouse whisker. we can identify specific pathways, and we work with our pharma partners to go and link those pathways to their existing compound library. So we can say, look, you already have a drug there that can be used for this condition that you never knew that drug could be useful for. Kind of like the Viagra story or the Ozempic story. You don't have to rely on luck anymore. We can do that for you. I'll go through this fairly quickly. I mentioned most of this. We are almost on track to complete our FDA pivotal study. We've already completed the study on 2,000 patients. We've raised $17 million in Series A through Bow Capital and Great Point Ventures, both very good venture groups. And while the markets are tough, I'm very proud to say that we just raised $8 million in a Series A2 funding with a 30% increase in valuation just 2 months ago. So while startup markets are really tight, we're bucking the trend and we're doing fairly well. I'll stop there. Please reach out anytime. And again, shout out to Lenzie for being such a good host and supporting our growth. Thanks.
Vishaal?
Thank you. So we've had an interesting journey. My name is Vishaal. I'm the CEO of Aanika Biosciences. We're actually focused on synthetic biology and ag tech. So we make products for food safety. So that's what Aanika does, but I know we're here to talk about lab space and real estate. So for us, unlike a lot of people in this room, we didn't need the level of lab space that's being developed currently in New York City or in the surrounding areas. For us, when we came out of NYC and raised venture funding, that was just all sort of out of our price range, and we wanted to focus on getting to market quickly, right? So for us, sort of time to market is a lot shorter than a therapeutics company, and we really wanted to allocate capital there. So we ended up building our own sort of really small BSL-1 space at Industry City in Brooklyn back in 2018 when we launched. And over time, we've moved 2 or 3 times, having to shift and build more space. And again, this is just BSL-1 space, so just benches and some pretty standard microbiology equipment. But over the pandemic and over the last 18 months, we decided to take out 27,000 square feet at Industry City, and with the help of EDC and Industry City, we fitted out quite a large BSL-2 space. And we were able to do that for considerably less than what a lot of other lab spaces are being built at around the city. And we didn't really cut any corners. It's fully equipped. It's just really targeting kind of a different type of customer. So we really built it for ourselves. And as a result, we said, look, basically, and somebody had mentioned this on an earlier panel, you're getting a lot more sort of economies of scale, so to speak, by taking out that much space, because even building out 5,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet with that level of air handling, it's pretty much the same thing. So in this new space, which opens up next month, we've got CGMP biomanufacturing, again, full BSL-2. We've got private breakout rooms, again, in a fully equipped microbiology lab that's around 10,000 square feet. And so for us, Aanika itself doesn't take up all of it. So we decided to launch a co-working space just in our own facility. And so we call that Cultured Colonies, and we're renting out on sort of the per bench model. And what's interesting is not only are we looking at sort of companies that are, let's say, seed to Series A, even Series B, depending on what they're doing, we can help them scale their product with our manufacturing, and we can even help them commercialize their products and get to market through Aanika. So we're sort of taking this approach that, especially in the field of synthetic biology, like there's a big gap among both the lab space and then the support and the infrastructure around it. And so we think it can be sort of more than just a regular incubator, but a place that you can get lab space, sort of swap ideas, but also get the hand-holding through regulatory approvals, because we've dealt with the FDA, the USDA, get help with manufacturing and scaling your product, and helping raise capital as well. So we open next month, as I mentioned, and we're really excited about the new space. We think that we're addressing a real gap in the market. And with all of this sort of Class A space that's being developed, it's really ignoring a lot of the venture-backed companies that are spinning up and growing quite fast that happen to be in sort of biotechnology in a general way, but are really kind of paving their own path, and they need space that's sort of dedicated for them. Yep, so please come find me during the drinks or reach out, and happy to talk more about it.
Thank you, guys. I guess we can open it up to questions. I guess the first one I would have is for Manish. How close are you to market approval for this?
That's a good question. So we have FDA breakthrough designation for our autism biomarker, and we've submitted our data to the FDA for another biomarker for Lou Gehrig's disease. We're going to have CLIA and LDT by the end of this year or early Q1 next year. So I would say by Q2 of next year, we're ready to roll out. We already have a group, a major hospital system that wants to use our test for almost a statewide program. So they're waiting for us to get that LDT signed off. We just signed a $4 million contract with the University of California for a clinical research testing. So again, we are testing patients, but these are under a research setting, not a clinical diagnostic setting. So that's we're already revenue generating. And of course, I mentioned the pharma contracts as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And before we open it up to other questions, I do have a question for Vishaal regarding your build-out costs. We're building out a new building right now that's already wet lab ready, shell space, and the additional build-out is probably closer to $450 a foot, maybe more, starting with some pretty good space. How are you doing it at $75 a foot?
To be honest, there's a couple of different things. We just got really creative, right? So some low-hanging fruit. The lab equipment that we source is coming, a lot of it's brand new, kind of top of the line, but we're being very strategic about how we acquire that. Unfortunately, this has been a really brutal down cycle, but that's left a lot of opportunities to basically acquire assets and lab equipment from other spaces. We were able to get creative in terms of things like chem hoods, just little things here and there really add up. I mean, we basically started with raw industrial space, put up the HVAC, which was our biggest cost. So we've got the proper air handling, but that's really it. It was like little corners here and there. And if you think about it, I think a lot of the developments being built, I mean, they're huge campuses, right? So for us, we're converting individual floors, and we can retrofit them pretty inexpensively. The equipment's just one big kind of component there.
That's amazing. And then on talent, I got to put my New Jersey hat back on despite my interest in what you're doing over there in Sunset Park. You've only been within New Jersey set up for about 8 or 9 months now. And how was the talent acquisition from the local community?
It's been surprisingly good. I mean, we're right next to Rutgers there. Johnson & Johnson is there, Boehringer Ingelheim, Novo Nordisk is not that far away. I would say in the last 9 months, 6 to 8 people have joined us from New Jersey. Although I'm sitting in New York, I have to say some of my New York-based colleagues have now moved over the river to Jersey City, and they're enjoying the cheaper rent, or at least a bigger apartment for the same rent.
When I did that, they called it a defection. You leave Manhattan.
Yeah, I stay in Westchester County. I've been loyal. Yeah. I pay those high taxes for the same potholed roads that haven't been fixed for the past 10 years, but that's okay. One day. It's been very good. I have to say that we've just been surprised by how much good talent we are getting, even in areas where we thought, well, that will be a West Coast thing like data science and software. We've found local people there. That's been great.
Right. Questions from the audience? Nancy?
Here's one that I heard at lunch from someone else who I don't think is here, so I'll ask it for him. So why did you make the decision to move from New York to New Jersey? How did that process, what did that
Okay, the reason was twofold. One was because we are a patient testing company, there are CLIA and LDT requirements, and there was a huge backlog in New York that would have just taken about 18 months, and New Jersey's process is just much more streamlined. So there was a statewide advantage. Secondly, there were the facilities we saw at New Jersey Bioscience Center. For the amount of space we needed, we are already 5,000 square feet of space. We've more than doubled our footprint there since we moved in there. And that flexibility is very important to us. And also the economic side of things, that rent there is much more accessible to a startup with our limited funds. And I know I can expand without having to leave and build a completely separate lab down the street or somewhere like that.
Great, thank you.
I have a question for Vishaal. Hey, hi. So you mentioned that you're going to create this path for commercialization for the startups through Aanika Biosciences. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, so an interesting thing about Aanika and what we do is actually we sell our biotechnology through an insurance platform, basically. So the way to think about this is we sell farmers insurance policies, and we basically say, look, if you use our technology, you can get a lower rate on food recall contamination insurance, for example, or different types of yield insurance. I mean, we're looking at everything from livestock to cargo. And so we've partnered with really big insurance companies to basically incentivize adoption of our technology. And that's really helpful because you end up selling something that these customers that have very low margins understand, as opposed to trying to educate them on genetic engineering and this really complex biotechnology that we're developing. So basically our idea, and one of the reasons we developed this whole incubator space, is companies working in similar fields, we can help sort of plug them through that same insurance platform and get traction for them much faster. And then again, just on site, scale their product and get to market. I mean, so that's been a sort of a ulterior motive to having our own incubator, which is we can look at different things like citrus greening disease or other types of products or types of risks in the commodities world, and say, how can biotechnology that the little groups are working on, how can we apply that technology, mitigate the risk, and basically sell this type of insurance product. So.
Other questions? Okay, with that, thank you.